Good morning, everyone. This is Dr. Jamnadas, and today I'm going to talk about the science between walking and fat cells in your body. Let me start by correcting a very common misunderstanding. Most people think fat cells are dead, storage blobs, lazy tissue that just sits there making you overweight. That couldn't be further from the truth. Fat cells, or adipocytes, are actually highly intelligent metabolic warehouses. They listen to hormones, they respond to signals, and most importantly, they decide when to store energy and when to release it. Before I begin today's informative session, I would like to tell you something. If you want to learn something new today, please watch this session till the very end with all your attention, because if you miss a part or some context, you may end up doing everything wrong. And I don't want you to do that. So please take some time and listen to me closely. Now, your problem is not that you have fat cells. Everyone has them. The problem is that your fat cells have been locked into storage mode for years, and they don't unlock because you tell them to. They unlock only when the chemistry is right. That's where walking comes in. When I tell patients that a simple 30-minute walk can change their metabolism, many of them look disappointed. They think fat loss has to hurt. They think it requires intensity, sweat, suffering. But biology doesn't care about suffering. Biology responds to signals. Walking sends some of the most powerful fat release signals we know. Think of fat cells like warehouses full of boxed fuel. Inside those boxes is triglyceride, stored energy made of fatty acids and glycerol. But there's a lock on the warehouse door. That lock is controlled by insulin. As long as insulin is high, the doors stay shut. No fuel leaves. Walking doesn't force the door open. It changes the environment so the lock naturally opens. The moment you start walking, even at a comfortable pace, your nervous system shifts. You move from a threat-dominant state into a movement-based, energy-demand state. That triggers the release of catecholamines, adrenaline, and noradrenaline, not in a panic way, but in a controlled physiological way. These hormones are the keys to the warehouse. They activate an enzyme inside fat cells called hormone-sensitive lipase, or HSL. HSL is the worker inside the warehouse that starts unpacking the boxes. It breaks triglycerides apart into free fatty acids and glycerol. But here's the key point: HSL only works well when insulin is low. Walking gently lowers insulin, not dramatically, not dangerously, but enough. And that's the sweet spot. Low insulin plus mild adrenaline equals fat release without stress. This is why moderate walking burns fat more reliably than very intense exercise. Intense workouts spike cortisol and can raise insulin afterward. Walking keeps insulin low and blood flow high. It keeps the warehouse doors open longer, and fat cells respond immediately. Within minutes of starting a walk, blood flow to adipose tissue increases. That's critical. Fat can't leave a warehouse if no delivery trucks are available. Increased blood flow is what allows free fatty acids to exit the fat cell and enter circulation. Now the fuel is moving, but releasing fat is only half the story. The body must also use that fat, otherwise it gets recycled back into storage. Walking activates muscle mitochondria, the engines that burn fat through beta oxidation. Slowly, efficiently, without strain. This is why walking is so powerful. It coordinates fat release with fat use. If you're still here with me, comment below the word yes and I'll know how many of you stayed with me. Now let's go minute by minute, because this is where most people misunderstand what walking actually does. The first 5 minutes of a walk don't feel dramatic. You're not sweating. Your heart rate isn't pounding. And that's exactly why people underestimate it. But metabolically, those first 5 minutes are critical. From minute 0 to 5, your body is warming the engine. Blood vessels begin to dilate, especially in skeletal muscle and adipose tissue. This increases circulation, which is essential for fat transport. At the same time, insulin levels begin to drift downward, not crash, just soften. That matters because fat cells are extremely sensitive to insulin. Even a small drop changes their behavior. During this phase, adrenaline and noradrenaline start to rise modestly. Not the fight or flight surge you get from intense exercise, but a calm alertness. Think of it like turning the key in a car and letting it idle. The system is preparing for fuel demand. Inside the fat cell, hormone-sensitive lipase is being activated, but it's not fully engaged yet. The warehouse doors are unlocked, but the trucks haven't started rolling in large numbers. This is why the scale doesn't move after a short walk. You've unlocked the system, but you haven't emptied anything yet. From minute 5 to 15, everything changes. This is where most people quit. And this is where fat burning actually begins. By now, insulin is clearly lower. Muscle contractions are signaling energy demand. Blood flow to adipose tissue is significantly higher. Hormone-sensitive lipase is fully active. Triglycerides inside fat cells are being broken apart into free fatty acids and glycerol. Now the delivery trucks are moving. Free fatty acids exit the fat cell and enter the bloodstream. They're carried by albumin to working muscles. This is real fat loss chemistry. Not calories burned on a treadmill screen, but actual stored energy being released. At the same time, muscles shift fuel preference. Early in the walk, muscles rely more on glucose. But as the walk continues and intensity remains moderate, mitochondria increasingly favor fatty acids. This is the fat burning zone, not defined by heart rate charts, but by hormone balance. This is why walking must be comfortable enough that you can talk in full sentences. If you can't talk, you're pushing into glycolytic stress territory. That shifts fuel use back towards sugar and increases cortisol. Cortisol tells fat cells to hold on. From minute 15 to 30, you're now in a metabolic sweet spot. Insulin is low, adrenaline is steady, not spiking, blood flow is high, fatty acid release continues, muscles are efficiently oxidizing fat through beta oxidation. The system is synchronized. This is where walking becomes therapeutic. You're not just burning fat, you're training your body to access fat. Each session improves communication between fat cells and muscles. Each session improves mitochondrial efficiency. Each session makes it easier to release fat the next time. After the walk, something important happens that most people miss. Insulin sensitivity improves. That means the next meal causes a smaller insulin response. Smaller insulin spikes mean less fat restorage. Walking doesn't just burn fat during the walk, it protects against fat gain afterward. This is why daily walking reshapes fat cells over time. If you're enjoying what you learned so far, please make sure you hit that subscribe button and leave me a like on this video if you still haven't. So now let's talk about what happens after the walk, because this is where the real transformation begins. Most people think fat loss only happens during movement. That's not true. Walking changes how your fat cells behave for the rest of the day, and over time, it changes what kind of fat cells you have. Fat cells are not just storage units, they're endocrine organs. They release hormones, inflammatory signals, and metabolic messengers that talk to your liver, your muscles, and your brain. When fat cells are large and stressed, especially visceral fat cells, they become inflamed, insulin-resistant, and dangerous. Daily walking reverses that process. After a 30-minute walk, insulin sensitivity improves in muscle and fat tissue. This means that when you eat your next meal, your pancreas does not need to release as much insulin. Lower insulin means the fat cell does not get the store energy signal as strongly. Over time, this shifts your body from storage mode to usage mode. Inside the fat cell, repeated lipolysis followed by efficient fat oxidation shrinks the cell. Smaller fat cells behave very differently than large ones. They release adiponectin, a hormone that improves insulin sensitivity and reduces inflammation. High adiponectin is one of the strongest markers of metabolic health. Large fat cells release inflammatory cytokines like TNF-alpha and IL-6. Small fat cells don't. Walking literally changes the chemical personality of your fat. There's another important adaptation that happens with consistent walking: improved fat transport capacity. Your body increases proteins like CD36 and fatty acid binding proteins. Think of these as better loading docks and faster trucks. Fat can move more easily from storage to usage. This is why someone who walks daily can burn fat easily, while someone who diets aggressively but doesn't move feels stuck. The second person has locked warehouses and broken trucks. Walking also improves blood flow to adipose tissue long term. Poor blood flow is one of the reasons visceral fat becomes resistant to fat loss. Exercise-induced capillary growth improves oxygen delivery and nutrient exchange, making fat cells more responsive to hormonal signals. Over weeks and months, something even more fascinating happens: fat cell browning. White fat is storage fat. Brown fat is metabolically active fat. It burns energy to produce heat. Walking stimulates myokines from muscle, including irisin, which encourages white fat to behave more like brown fat. It doesn't turn white fat into brown fat completely, but it makes it more metabolically active. This means your fat tissue starts helping you burn energy instead of hoarding it. Importantly, walking does this without triggering excessive cortisol. High-intensity exercise can burn calories, but it often raises cortisol, especially in people who are already stressed, insulin-resistant, or sleep-deprived. Cortisol tells the body to protect visceral fat. Walking does the opposite. It tells the body it is safe. This is why walking works when everything else fails. Comment below the word "I will" if you are going to apply any of the things you learned today, and also hit that like button if you still haven't. Now let me address a big misconception that keeps people stuck. The belief that harder exercise equals more fat loss. On paper, intense workouts burn more calories per minute. But the human body doesn't work on paper. It works on hormones, perception of stress, and survival chemistry. Fat loss is not about punishment. It's about permission. When you do very intense exercise, especially fasted, sleep-deprived, or already stressed, you trigger a strong cortisol response. Cortisol is not a bad hormone, it's essential for survival. But chronically elevated cortisol tells the body one thing: hold on to energy. And the most protected energy reserve in the body is visceral fat. That's why so many people do high-intensity workouts, sweat buckets, feel exhausted, and still can't lose belly fat. Walking is different. A 30-minute walk sits below the stress threshold. It raises adrenaline and noradrenaline just enough to stimulate fat release, but not enough to trigger a cortisol surge. The nervous system stays in a parasympathetic friendly state. This tells the body, we're safe. You can spend energy. Think of it like this. Intense exercise is like shouting at your fat cells. Walking is like calmly opening the door and inviting fat out. If someone comes to mind while listening to this lecture, please share this video with them right now, because you never know when you help someone quietly. Now, another reason walking works better is fuel preference. During very intense exercise, the body prioritizes glucose because it's fast. Fat is slower to mobilize. You may burn more total calories during a sprint, but a smaller percentage comes from fat. During moderate walking, a higher percentage of energy comes from fat oxidation. That's why people who walk consistently often lose more visceral fat than people who train harder but sporadically. Walking also preserves muscle. This is critical. Muscle is your metabolic engine. When you lose muscle, your resting metabolic rate drops. High cortisol plus undereating plus intense exercise is a recipe for muscle loss. Walking protects muscle by keeping cortisol low and growth hormones stable. This is especially important during fasting or calorie restriction. Walking signals the body to burn fat instead of muscle. That's the difference between weight loss and metabolic improvement. There's also a psychological component that matters more than people realize. Walking is sustainable. You don't dread it. You don't need willpower to recover from it. Consistency beats intensity every time in biology. Most people quit at 10 minutes. That's tragic metabolically speaking, because the real shift doesn't happen until 15 to 20 minutes. That's when insulin is clearly low, lipolysis is active, and fat oxidation is dominant. If you stop early, you unlock the warehouse but never move the inventory. Now let's talk about pace, because speed matters less than rhythm. The best pace is one where you can speak in full sentences but feel slightly warm, not breathless, not strained. This keeps you in the fat oxidation zone and out of cortisol territory. Now let's talk about inflammation. Because visceral fat is not just extra weight, it's active inflammatory tissue. And this is where walking quietly does something powerful that no supplement or crash diet can replicate. Visceral fat cells release inflammatory molecules continuously. These signals travel straight to the liver through the portal vein. That's why visceral fat is so tightly linked to fatty liver, insulin resistance, heart disease, and even dementia. The liver is constantly being bathed in inflammatory signals, and over time, it changes how your entire metabolism behaves. Daily walking interrupts that loop. When you walk regularly, fat cells shrink. Smaller fat cells release fewer inflammatory cytokines and more adiponectin. Adiponectin is one of the most protective hormones in the body. It improves insulin sensitivity, reduces vascular inflammation, and enhances fat oxidation. This shift happens before major weight loss shows up on the scale. That's why some people feel better, sleep better, and see improvements in blood sugar and blood pressure before they look different. The chemistry has already changed. Walking also improves insulin signaling at the fat cell level. Insulin resistance in fat tissue is a major driver of metabolic disease. When fat cells become insulin resistant, they release fatty acids uncontrollably into the bloodstream, which worsens insulin resistance in muscle and liver. Walking restores order. By improving blood flow and mitochondrial function, fat cells regain proper insulin responsiveness. This means fat is released when it should be released and stored when it should be stored, not all the time. That flexibility is metabolic health. Another critical effect of walking is its impact on the immune system within fat tissue. Visceral fat often becomes infiltrated with inflammatory immune cells called macrophages. Walking reduces this infiltration and shifts immune signaling toward repair rather than attack. Over time, your fat tissue becomes less hostile. There's also a gut connection. Regular walking improves gut motility and microbial diversity. A healthier microbiome produces fewer endotoxins that trigger fat inflammation. This indirectly reduces visceral fat stress and improves metabolic signaling. None of this requires exhaustion. None of it requires willpower battles. It requires repetition. This is why walking daily, even when it feels too simple, outperforms aggressive programs in the long run. Biology responds to patterns, not punishment. And here's something important. Visceral fat often responds faster than subcutaneous fat. Belly fat may be the last to disappear visually, but internally it is often the first to improve metabolically when inflammation drops. This is why blood markers improve early. If you're enjoying what you listened so far, please comment below the word helpful, and I'll know whether this topic is beneficial to my beloved viewers. And again, if you still haven't subscribed to this channel, go ahead and do it right now, because in the coming days, I'm going to come up with so many new informative lectures. Now let's make this practical, because science only matters if you can actually use it. If your goal is to burn visceral fat, the how of walking matters more than the distance, the step count, or the calorie number on your phone. The goal is not exhaustion, the goal is signaling. First, let's talk about how to walk for maximum fat oxidation. The best pace is what I call the conversation pace. You should be able to speak in full sentences without gasping. If you're breathing so hard you can't talk, you're too fast. That pushes you toward sugar burning and cortisol release. Slow down. Second, aim for at least 30 minutes. 10 minutes is not enough. 15 minutes is the threshold. 30 minutes is where the chemistry stabilizes. This is when insulin stays low long enough for fat release to matter and for muscles to fully switch into fat oxidation mode. Third, timing matters less than consistency. But if you want an edge, walking after meals is extremely powerful for blood sugar control. And walking fasted or lightly fed can enhance fat oxidation. Both work. Choose what you can repeat daily. Now let's address safety. If you have diabetes, especially if you're on insulin or sulfonylureas, you need to monitor your blood sugar. Walking lowers glucose, and that's usually a good thing, but you need to be aware of hypoglycemia risk. If you have heart disease, severe joint issues or balance problems, start slowly. Even 10 minutes is valuable at first. Build gradually. The benefit comes from repetition, not intensity. If you've been sedentary for years, your body may resist at first. That doesn't mean it's not working. It means the system is relearning how to move fuel. Give it time. Now here's the most important thing I want you to understand. Most people quit walking at exactly the wrong moment. They stop because it feels too easy. They stop because they don't see dramatic changes immediately. They stop because they think something this simple can't possibly work. But biology loves simple. Walking works because it restores the conditions under which fat is allowed to leave. It lowers insulin, it lowers inflammation, it lowers cortisol, it improves blood flow, it improves mitochondrial function, it trains fat cells to behave properly again, and it does all of this without triggering the survival alarms that make fat cling harder. So here's my challenge to you. Don't wait for the perfect plan. Don't wait for motivation. Don't wait until Monday. Put on your shoes and walk today. Walk for 30 minutes. Walk at a pace you can sustain. Walk tomorrow. Walk the next day. Let the chemistry do the work. The perfect moment is right now. Get up, step outside, start moving, and when you're done, come back on this video and tell me how many steps do you walk today. Now, if you've watched my full lecture today, I salute your attention span because nowadays people can't even stay focused on something for a few minutes. Go ahead in the comments section and tell me what was the one best thing you learned today. I'd love to hear that. And if you think today's lecture was beneficial and informative, please make sure you subscribe to my channel and also hit that like button. Thanks for joining me in today's lecture, and I'll see you in the next one.